We have 3 lines from the bottom of page AyinBase 11. And the line starts with la-asot. We are in the middle of explaining a principle. That is encapsulated by the statement that Ruchnis and Gashmias do not really relate, do not really mix, do not really connect, and the fact that there is such a connection, which is in fact obvious everywhere. The fact that the neshama is mislavish in the group, that's a connection between Ruchnis and Gashmias. And then on the lower levels, as we explained, the koiches, the koich ha-seichel in the brain, and the midas in the heart, this is all connection between Ruchnis and Gashmias. But this whole phenomenon actually represents Ayin shel pele, koich mafli la-asot. It is not by virtue of their own natures that they correlate in such a way. So we can pursue this inside now. The line begins with la-asot, 3 lines in the bottom. Moi kein ha'esh. So similarly, the fire. There are 4 elements, as we discussed, and we all know. There are 4 elements. All of these 4 elements are presences in the world. They combine together to create and to present a worldly presence. And one of them is Eish. It's a necessary element in this presence. Yet the Eish, mitzad hadakus v'haruchni shalei, due to the fineness of this fire, ruchnius, almost to the extent that it has a spiritual quality. It does not mix and does not unite with the other yesodis, with the other 3 elements. The other 3 elements have something in common. Eish does not share a principal element with them. Ubetivoy, in its nature, ho'oile tomid l'mayla. It is constantly rising upwards. Lehikolir bim koiroi. And this rising upwards is lehikolir bim koiroi, to be incorporated and be back united with its source. We will discuss this a little bit after we have the presentation for the mind. The sibas hateva hazois, the cause for this nature, that it is constantly rising upwards with the intent of being reincorporated in its source. Who? The cause is mipnei shehu makur lim koiroi, because it is close to its source. V'nirgash b'im koiroi, and internal to its presence, to its own being, nirgash b'im koiroi, its source is sensed. I want to discuss a principle with this. Everything in the world has a source. To start with, on a most basic principle, everything is a creation. Nothing in the world is, we say, is kadmoin, is present by its own virtue, by its own devices. It's a creation. The fact that it's a creation, let us take, as we always do, an extremely simple illustration of this principle. We speak about this often, lately. A car is a presence in the world. Stands on its own. What is the source of the car? What created the car? What conceptualized the car? What initiated it, like you said before? The initiation, the initial concept, the initial reality of the car actually is rooted in nefesh ha'odam, or the rotzon ha'odam, which is also representative of the nefesh. Because of the fact that Odom perceives his place, not in a narrow place where he is physically, but he has a spiritual perception of his place. Like the Hashem says, Mokim she'ritzoyne shel Odom shomhu, which means he is everywhere. He is in the entire world. In order to translate that perception on a practical level, in Gashmis, he conceptualized the car. He can get there by walking, he can get there by horse, but then he said, hey, all of these resources get exhausted pretty soon. A car is a wonderful invention. All you have to do is refill it with gas, and it can journey for thousands and thousands of miles. It doesn't get tired. And all other things. Okay. So this entity is a creation of the human spirit. Yet it is possible to lose sight that this is a creation of the human spirit. I can point out many times that once he got into the world and he got to the lower elements in the world, the lower elements of perception of reality, it came about that the car is not used to travel and to get any place. The car is used to compete. Who can make a circle faster? Which is totally not its intent. It loses completely its spirit. This is not what a car is. Yet it's possible. It's possible to become, for the car, so to speak, become independent of its source. And it functions now independently. It's a misuse of it. It loses its spirit. But it's possible. Everything in the world has a mocker of this type. A mocker means it is rooted, in general, in overall, there's a creator, there is a godly creator. This Bereishis Bara Elokim es Hashemayim v'Haaretz is a statement that anything that you find in Shemayim v'Haaretz is rooted in Elokim. Whether you see it or not, that depends on your intelligence, depends on your refinement, but essentially that's what it is. Because that's the beginning of everything. Among the things that the Rebbe created, I said, in essentially, this is 4 different elements, 4 different denominations. Among the 4 denominations, there are more finer, that which pertains to worldliness, that which pertains more to spirit. the more spirited it is, the more spiritual it is, the more pertaining to spirit. Let's discuss this for a moment. In the world itself, the world is physical. Like we said, the car becomes an entity when it can stand on its own. You don't have to hold it. You put it down and it stands and it's waits for you to get in to use it. Yet, there is an element of spirit that goes along with it. And that is that in its very design and its very construction, it represents some kind of a functional purpose. This functional purpose is reflective of its source. I said, the function of the car moving, just moving, is not reflective of its source. Because you can have it move in circles, which doesn't accomplish anything for its source. But within that function, there is a spirit. This is, so to speak, the Yesod Ha'esh in that whole structure. The Yesod Ha'esh is not an entity that stands on its own, and it represents the spirit that created it. This Yesod Ha'esh represents the spirit that created this, is that it is constantly drawn back to its source. What is it? What am I about? And if you lose sight of the source, you lose sight of this whole phenomenon. It doesn't exist, but for the fact that it connects to the source and represents the source. You have to come down to a table, right? A table is also a structure with all kinds of different things. It stands, and it could be built in a very nice way. What, in fact, is a table? Does it exist but for the human element in it? A table standing in the middle of the desert is not a table. A table in a home, in a dining room, is a table. A table in the bathroom or in the bedroom is not a table. It has to have a proper context to represent the human function, the human presence. This is what is Yesod Ha'esh. Yesod Ha'esh is that final element in everything that is representative of its source. Why am I here to begin with? And therefore it is constantly pointing to its source. And is rising up. In that is in the Eish is sensed the Moker. It doesn't want to be a separate entity. So this is, if you can readily see this in all the Mishalim. This is true regarding the physical fire. The physical fire, the nature of the physical fire is that it consumes all element of a lower level, of a worldly level, and its message is, there is nothing but the Moker. This is the message of the fire. Oh, you're a big structure. No, I'll take you apart and I'll show you that you're nothing. ash and water. There's nothing there. This is the nature of fire. And the Siba means, pardon me, its mokar is sensed in it. Like we said, a table is not a table, but for the human presence. Even though it's a presence, but it senses that this is not really me. And this is why it's constantly drawn to the mokar. Okay, this is only in line to explain the principle that we discussed yesterday, that the whole relationship between Ruchnis and Gashmis is really a pella. Koyach mafli lasis. It's a command, it's a godly command. There's not a natural affinity between them. Okay, when I finish it by the page. Hateva hazois hi beho'oyer dafka. This is why this teva, this nature of rising upwards to the source is beho'oyer dafka, is exclusively present in the oyer. Oyer over here means oyer, as we say, oyer is a kelim. Because of the virtue of the quality of oyer, then it is ruchni. As we only can describe it now. Kiodua, as we know, Beinyan oyeres v'kelim. In discussing this distinction between oyeres and kelim. So there we know the tava hakeli, who the nature of the keli is leired ulhimoshech lamato. It is to descend and to be drawn downwards. The tava ha'oir, and the nature of the oir who lalish lamaylo.
Hello.
What happened?
We're back. When the music got put on mute.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Teva ha'keli hu leired lamato, v'teva ha'oyer hu lalish lamaylo. Teva ha'keli, what is keli? Let's take it on the simplest level. A keli, you have a cup and you have water in a cup. The function of the keli, of the cup, what is the nature of the keli? That it should be independent, it should be able to stand on its own. If it cannot have that, then it's not a keli. The water inside the keli is constantly begging for the drinking. It's not made to be standing there and to be. It is there to be serving the human being, to be drunk. This is just so to speak, a gross illustration of the terms, Eirvi Keli. On a more meaningful, perhaps, on a more meaningful level, we talk about seichel, for example. There is the oira seichel, and there is a kliya seichel. pointed out quite some time ago that there was this gentleman who had a little doggy, and he trained his dog that he would say to the dog, 2 and 3, he would bark out 5 times. We discussed this, that the dog had absolutely no idea that 2 and 3 are 5. That's the beginning. He knew, he was trained that if he says 2, he should bark out 2 times. And he was trained that if he says 3, he should bark out 3 times. And he says 2 and 3, so he barks out for 2 and 2 times and 3 times. He didn't bark out 5 times. It's not within the capacity, within the existence of a dog. But then beyond that, 2 is not 2 in the real sense of the word, like a human being perceives 2. It's 2 once. Not 2, there is no a unit of 2. Because the dog knows only the keli, 1 and 2. Doesn't know the oyer, the concept of 2. The concept of 2 remains true. Excuse me. Only the nefesh hodam, only the seichel hodam. The principle of 1 and 2, on putting, this is the keli by which we can capture the concept that exists in the seichel hodam. When we teach our children to say 1 and 2, say count up 1 and 2, say it says 2. This is our means to arouse in our children the thought that we cannot transmit in words. What is 2? But through the keli of 1 and 1, we can open up their minds to 2. So the keli, even in the seichel, the keli, the principle of the keli is to bring his seichel down to a tangible level. And it's only a means to the seichel. This is not the seichel. There's no way that the seichel itself will be contained in the keli. Because the seichel reverts back to, the seichel remains a concept, a human concept. Only a bar seichel can relate to seichel. A dog has no seichel, but he can relate to the keli. 1 and 2, bum, bum, bum. But to the seichel, there's no way, you can't transmit it. Because seichel is oyer. Oyer is connected to the source. Without the source, there's no oyer. All the things that we've discussed, so to speak, over the years and so on, this should be sufficient to get the point here. The teva hakeli hu leired lamato, b'rimoshech lamato. That's the nature of the keli. Why is that the nature of the keli? Because the principle of the keli is that it is a freestanding entity. But what is the function of a cup? To be able to deliver something from one place to another place, independent of anything else. Therefore, it has to lamata. It has to occupy its own place in the world. That's meant lamata. Even though it's conceived by the person, is designed by a human being, but it has to occupy its own place in the world. And that's a tiva. The better keli is the one that occupies its place better than the precarious keli. If you have a keli that is able to hold water but it doesn't have a flat bottom, it's not a real keli. It cannot stand on its own. In Beis Hamikdash, they had these bazikin, when they collected the blood, they didn't have bottom. They had rounded bottoms or pointed bottoms, so that the kohen should not put it down by mistake. If he puts it down, then the blood begins to dry, to congeal. Because that keli is not meant to hold, to be. It's meant just to transmit for a moment. So it's meant like this, that it should not be able to stay. But the inyan of a keli is in teven limshech lamato, to be drawn lamato, to combine with the lowest element possible, so that it be part of the matter. This is its ultimate accomplishment. It can stand completely independent of the human being. Teva ha'oir is just the opposite. It's la-asot l'mayla. It is to rise upwards. This is, I can't restrain myself but to mention, this is the terrible fallacy of the scientific seichel. It's not seichel. It's a seichel that goes downwards. Seichel is supposed to rise upwards. It's not seichel at all. It's counterproductive. It's destructive to seichel. And thus, oires v'kelim, these two aspects of oir and kelim, oires and kelim, hein bechinas chesed ugvura. They represent the union of chesed and gvura. This is the phenomenal union that the Rebbe is pointing out. Everything in the world has a source, and the source of the source, ultimately, it is sourced in one of the 7 midos. Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, Malchus. Chesed, Eres v'kelim is Chesed and Gvura. The keli, because from that perspective, keli is bechinas chesed. This is the aspect of chesed. Why? Because it has it is in constant. This is in a state, and it has the nature of yirida v'hamshocha, to descend and to be nimshach downwards, to provide, to serve. This is chesed. The oil that is in aspect, in the state of aliyah, v'histalkus, rising, and elimination of its connection to be eliminated from existence, from its worldly presence. This is the union of Gvura. We'll discuss it after we have the full presentation. B'sibas ha'hefresh beinayim, the cause for this difference between them of Eres and Kelim is Masha HaKeli Eina b'bchinas dveikus b'im Kelim. It is the fact that the Keli is not in a state of dveikus, of connection to its mokir. And the oil is in a state of dveikus to its mokir. This is why we have this difference. Okay, we have 2 minutes. I'd like to discuss the scene. Okay, Just give me 2 minutes. Everything in the world, as we said before, has a mocker. The mocker is what justifies its presence. The mocker is what gives its presence, so to speak, a real presence. That it's not precarious, it's not shaky in its existence. It has a real presence. Eris v'kelim have this same requirement. Eris, because that they are connected to their source, they do not seek to be identified with the worldly existence, because the source justifies my existence. I'm not precarious, I have a source. The Keli is not connected to the source. It's a Metzias on its own. Since it's its own, it has to go down to the point where it becomes a real Metzias. It cannot stay in between. It's why the Keli goes down to become part of the world, and Oir goes up to disengage from the world, because my Metzias is my justification for my existence is L'mayla, not L'mata. This will be it for this morning.
So here, Eris and Keli are standing in for
Chesed and Gvura.
Chesed and Gvura, Gashmis and Ruchnis,
Right.
and it's still Pele. We haven't got, you're saying, Mafila, so we haven't. It's a wonder that the Eris stay in the Keli.
That's right. The wonder is in the country. Yeah.
By nature, they would completely disengage.
You can see how wondrous it is.
Mm.
Everyone is familiar with the concept, with the principle of 1 and 1 is 2. And yet, what do we end up with? 1 and 1 is 2 ones. If you really want to grab it's 2 ones, you lose sense that it's 2. Because the 2 element is not part of the world. The world is part of your seichel. You can't teach that.